And welcome back to Hannity. So when Democrats have their backs up against the wall, they take a page out of their old, worn-out playbook, and they try to paint Republicans as evil. And as you can imagine, more and more Republicans, as they stand up for their constituents and try and defund the president's disastrous health care law, the rhetoric, well, turns pretty nasty. Here's just a small sampling of the disgusting, well, words used by liberals in the last few days.
But we're not going to bow to Tea Party anarchists who deny the mere fact that Obamacare is the law. We will not bow to Tea Party anarchists who refuse to accept the Supreme Court ruled Obamacare to be constitutional.
This is playing with fire. Legislative arsonists are at work when they start using the debt limit for their own agenda. I don't even like to use the word Republicans because this is a name that has been hijacked by a segment of the Republican Party, the Tea Party element.
You have never seen in the history of the United States the debt ceiling or the threat of not raising the debt ceiling being used to extort a president.
And here with reaction to the outrageous rhetoric, Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Democratic strategist Penny Lee, anarchists, arsonists, extortionists. You know, Penny, you and I have debated for years. I can't remember a time you would ever use those words. You wouldn't use those words, would you?
No, it's not language I would use, but to say that it's only coming from one side, that the heated debate and the heated rhetoric is only coming from one side, it's misrepresentation. Lamar Alexander is going out there and saying that the implementation of Obamacare is going to be similar to that of what happened in Iran-Contra. Senator Grassley has gone into his town halls and saying Obamacare is going to be about killing grandma. So the rhetoric on both sides, I don't think is any language I would use, and not particularly helpful.
When Kathleen Sebelius denied the waiver to Sarah Murnahan to go on the adult transplant list, she would have died. So I think that's a legitimate term. Katie, what do you think?
Well, if Senator Grassley is going and talking about killing grandma, he pulled that right out of the Democratic playbook and out of a Democratic ad actually showing grandma being pushed off a cliff by someone who looked like Paul Ryan. But back to the issue of the rhetoric here. Look, we see this over and over again. And when to take a quote from Margaret Thatcher, when they're insulting you personally, it's because they don't have a political argument left. And so instead of coming up with a coherent argument about why Obamacare is good for the country, why we need a debt ceiling increase of even though we're at $17 trillion, instead of coming up with an argument why that's a good thing, instead they throw out scary words like anarchist and extortion.
Because it works. Let's be honest.
But you know what? But listen, the rhetoric, the words are coming also from their own Republicans in the Senate. If you look, Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina has said it is crazy. Coburn said it was dishonest. Many of the Republicans over there are trying to put out the fire. They're actually trying to put out the fire that the House started. So you have a lot of Senate Republicans right now that are running away from this.
Well, we'll see. It's going to be interesting. Katie, the one person who, frankly, I now admire is every Republican ran, and they all said they would repeal Obamacare and replace it. Every one of them. I can't think of one that didn't. Here's Ted Cruz holding his party accountable to their pledge, their promise as a public servant. And you got all these milquetoast, moderate, fence-sitting, liberal TV pundits, TV hosts, even Republicans, feeding Chris Wallace talking points to smear Ted Cruz. He's become the target. What's your reaction to that? Because I like what he's doing.
I like what he's doing, too, and I'm happy to see not only just a Republican, but a politician who ran on something that he's actually coming to Washington and doing. That's one of the biggest frustrations among the American people when it comes to their elected officials, because they tell them one thing when they're running for election, and then they come to Washington and do a complete other thing. And I want to congratulate Senator Ted Cruz for being on John McCain's hate list. I think that he should continue to wear that as a badge of honor. Yeah, absolutely.
John McCain complains about me to people that know me. Poor me. My heart's broken. All right, but here's what is it about Ted Cruz? Every Republican ran on this, Penny, and he's the only one that's actually sticking up for his promise. What do you think of those other Republicans that don't have the courage of their convictions? Because I don't really respect some of them.
Well, it's very interesting. And, you know, I always had great respect when I was working in the Senate for Tom Coburn, because it was the exact same thing. He stood for the principles in which he fought for, and which he was elected to do. So I had a great amount of respect for him because he stood and he was consistent. Yeah. The one thing that is hard in dealing with some of the members in the Senate was that they would switch when it was convenient. And so I applaud him for sticking to his own, for Ted Cruz for sticking to his principles, as he said. But what he did was he didn't build the consensus around it. And I think that's what's getting him in trouble right now.
No, he did.
They wouldn't be there. You know what? For me, Katie, as a registered conservative in New York, this is a tipping point for me. If the Republicans don't stand here against this massive, failed model that they put together that's too expensive, that's going to result in people not getting full-time jobs, that's going to cost an astronomical amount of money, then I frankly don't see any difference between them and the Democrats. I'm finished with them.
This is one of the only times in history that the Republicans actually have public opinion completely on their side. They have allies in every single sector, whether it's the unions, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's with some teachers, with the regular everyday Americans, small businesses. They have everyone on their side here, and yet they can't get it done. And if they can't get this done, then what's the point of having that party, you know, say these things to get elected, quite frankly? And Ted Cruz is doing exactly what he said he would do, and it's time for Republicans to do the same.
Well, you got Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and Rand Paul and Marco. They're the four people that have been on this from the beginning. So we'll see what happens.
I think, I think more than anything, though, people want the city and the government to function, and that's what's going to be the real test.
Well, the test is they did fund the rest of the government. They funded debt, obligation, the military, Social Security. They funded everything but that.
Yep.
And they,
let's see. Let's see.
Obama gets everything except for Obamacare, but he won't do it.
So it's going to be interesting to see if Obama shuts the government down. I'm very interested to see how he reacts. Penny, you're shaking your head.
It is the Ted Cruz amendment and the House Republicans that are wanting to shut this down.
No, in fairness, they're funding the government.
They don't want to shut down.
There is going to be a bill on Friday that is a clean, continuing resolution that will prove to say who is shutting down the government.
And then the Republicans can send back a clean bill that funds everything but Obamacare. Clean.
One thing. Is Obama willing to give up one thing for the rest of his big government spending? We'll have to see.
It's going to be a showdown. I like showdowns. I like principle. Stand tight. Don't hold the line. You wishy-washy guys without a backbone or a spine or bended knees. All right, coming up next.